welcome to another episode of All Fired Up with Brandon Ramsey. We are live here on Wednesday afternoon, June 12th. And as we get some folks trickling into today's live episode, first and foremost, please make sure you are subscribed to the Brandon Ramsey College Basketball Show YouTube channel, which is where you are right now. Every Wednesday, right now at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time, we host live episodes of All Fired Up. So make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of those. Obviously, also, if you're watching this live, you can jump right into the comments and ask questions, just leave thoughts as we get through today's topics. Also, please make sure you are liking the video as well to help continue support and grow the channel. Also, you can find the Brandon Ramsey College Basketball Show on podcast every Monday and Friday. We have new episodes there. Going to get back into having some guests on the next couple of weeks as well. And then also to catch all of my content, whether it be the written work on KentuckySportsRadio.com, this YouTube show, the podcast, all that good stuff, and much, much more. It all lives on my Twitter feed, which you can follow me there at BRamseyKSR. We have quite a bit of ground to cover today, and I think some good topics to dive into. We're going to go back just a little bit, even to some things that happened over the course of this weekend. I did not actually have a new episode of my show on Monday because I was hosting or guest hosting with Nick Roush, Kentucky Roll Call on Big X Radio in Louisville. A lot of fun doing that show from 7 to 9. So did not have a chance to get a podcast episode out on Monday because of the radio show. But Dan Hurley is back in college basketball. Or I guess really, I shouldn't say back. He never left, obviously, but he is remaining in college basketball as the head coach of the Connecticut Huskies. Now, is this a massive surprise? I don't necessarily think it's a massive surprise. Now, there are certainly some folks that I know and trust that are of the belief that Dan Hurley will be an NBA coach at some point in his career. He wants to be at the pinnacle of just basketball in general. Obviously, he's kind of reached the pinnacle of college basketball. So if you want to continue to climb the mountaintop, what better place to go than the Los Angeles Lakers? Now, he's a Northeast guy through and through. I mean, his dad was a longtime high school coach in the Northeast. He obviously grew up in that region and was a high school coach there as well before, getting on at the college ranks, mostly in the Northeast. So would it make more sense for him to someday be the Knicks coach, the 76ers coach, the Celtics coach, something like that? Could those jobs be more attractive? Yeah, probably so. So maybe that's why it's not necessarily super shocking that he didn't want to, make his first jump into a new path of basketball to go to Los Angeles where, life's just a little bit different out on the West Coast. And you have to deal with being the head coach of LeBron James. And I think it's, that just comes with its own distractions, challenges, etc. I think that, this is something we've talked about, I think, a little bit, that, 5, 6, 7 years ago, being LeBron's coach, it was still maybe a little bit of a struggle, but it also brought you kind of immediate success. Like, you were going to reach the conference finals or likely the NBA finals if you were associated with LeBron. Well, now it doesn't necessarily mean that. And now you might have to also, your first order of business might be drafting Bronny James. And, I think that maybe Dan Hurley just decided, you know what, I want to try to do something that, there's obviously already an extremely short list of repeat champions in college basketball. Like, let's go for a three-peat. And with Alex Carabin coming back and all these guys, they have a chance to do it. They're going to be a preseason top 5 team, most likely. So you have a real chance to do something that, for the most part has never been done, certainly in modern college basketball. And I think that is attractive to Coach Hurley as well. Travis says in the comments, I think the pinnacle I think the pinnacle can be college basketball. It seems to be more popular than the NBA recently. Coach K is more known, liked than Steve Kerr. That's a really good point as well. I think that's something I'm going to get into here in a second, that maybe things have shifted a little bit where it's not like, well, in order to really, find what I can become as a basketball coach, I have to eventually get to the NBA. That being the kind of the pinnacle of all pinnacles. I don't know if that's necessarily true anymore. Like Travis said, and I think we see some of that in what this deal that was proposed to him. And yeah, the Travis adds on NBA title. Yeah, I mean you really rarely. I mean, heck, even think about like Greg Popovich and some of these guys. Like, yeah, he gets a lot of credit. Phil Jackson comes to mind. Pat Riley comes to mind. Like, these are coaches we all know and I think respect nationally across the basketball landscape. But you're absolutely right. Like when an NBA team wins a title, we talk about Steph Curry, we talk about LeBron James, we talk about Shaquille O'Neal, Kobe Bryant. Like, we don't necessarily always associate it to the coach. Whereas in college, I do think it is a lot of times like, okay, well, how many? Dan Hurley has 2 championships. Coach K has however many championships. Bob Knight has however many championships. And like after 5-10 years, you can't even name the players that were on those teams, but you know the years and the programs and the coaches that won those titles. But I did find it interesting that once Dan Hurley said that he was coming back, or again, staying is a better term, staying at UConn, kind of came out that the Lakers offered him like 6 years and $70 million. And I remember I was sitting there looking at my Twitter feed, and I just like fell back in my chair almost. Like, there was never any chance that the Lakers were going to get Dan Hurley for 6 years, $70 million. The dude's got to make $50 million over 6 years at UConn. Now, I think we would all do a lot of things for $20 million, but wealthy is wealthy at some point. And I think he's obviously pretty comfortable, especially when you factor in the cost of living in Storrs, Connecticut to Los Angeles. Like, we literally probably aren't talking about a whole lot of difference in terms of quality of life or overall wealth. And Kentucky, just 2 months ago, Kentucky was going to give the dude like 10 years, $100 million. So, obviously I'm wearing the UK shirt today. Got the UK stuff behind me. I obviously, I'm to me it makes UK look great. Like, man, like Travis said, maybe college can be the pinnacle because Kentucky apparently has a lot more money to throw around than the Los Angeles Lakers. Now, I can understand why in the NBA, because just the way things turn over and the way that um, the players do have quite a bit of power. And we see, I mean, heck, we've seen coaches make the conference finals and get fired because it's not the NBA championship. So, you're probably never going to see a, super long-term deal at the pro levels. But like, I literally thought, I'm not exaggerating, when I thought that the Lakers would be offering like $15 million a year. I really thought that would probably be what they were going to do for Dan Hurley. Now, maybe they offered him 6 years, 70 million because they didn't really care. And like, they're always going to hire JJ Redick anyway, or whoever it may be. But when I saw 6 years, 70 million, I was like, well, yeah, no wonder Dan Hurley stayed in college at Connecticut. Like, that, to me, that's like half of what it was going to take to actually go get him and what I actually thought the Lakers were going to throw at him. But that is what it is. And I do think, coming out of this, and I really, really like Coach Dan Hurley. I love the swagger. I love the intensity. I think some of the things that probably rub some people the wrong way, I'm all about, especially when you're the back-to-back national champion. Like, the guy goes out on the recruiting trail and he's wearing a backwards hat and he's, kind of looking like, acting and looking and talking like the cool guy and all this kind of stuff. And like, some of that, I could take it or leave it, but when you win the championships, you can act and do and say whatever in the heck you want, in my opinion. And now, yeah, he kind of played this up a little bit, it seems like. Now, I don't know how close he ever got or what the negotiations were like with Los Angeles, but to announce that you're going to make an announcement to then just keep your current job. Like, I think he wanted to play this up a little bit, and that kind of fits his personality. And again, that's okay. Dude's won back-to-back national championships. He can be as much of a prima donna as about some of the stuff as he wants to be. And I don't mean any of that disparagingly, but like, the amount of recruiting ammo that this guy just built himself in Stores, Connecticut is impressive. And I do think that's probably in the back of his mind the whole time of, I think he's really, really smart, and he's learned how to play this game a little bit of, letting himself sort of be rumored as a candidate for the Kentucky job, letting himself be rumored as a candidate for the Lakers job, letting these offers even come to fruition a little bit, and then stinks. Now, every single family, every single kid that comes to visit at UConn, he can look them in the eye and say, I've been offered, arguably the best job there is in college basketball and the best job that there is in the National Basketball Association, and I turned them the heck down, and I'm sitting here trying to recruit you. I don't know what could have really happened that would be better for the way that he'll be able to recruit at UConn now, and who wouldn't want to go play for that guy? Like he's shown, at least on paper. Now I still question whether it's true or not, but he's at least shown that he wants to be the basketball coach at Connecticut. He wants to chase these championships, and I think that you're going to see them reap the benefits in recruiting in these next couple of cycles because of these recent decisions that he has made. Transitioning to another college basketball figure that certainly is not afraid of the limelight, not afraid to speak their opinion, and absolutely has some, prima donna aspects to them. Quickly, I want to get to Travis's last comment here. Just saying those things matter without also handing out a bag, though. Is the bag more valuable or the speech? Yeah, I mean, obviously in college basketball now, NIL kind of rules the world. Now, I also think, to your point, like if I'm a booster at UConn, or if I'm just a wealthy person that's willing to donate to the program, like probably doesn't hurt. Dan Hurley turning down some of these jobs. Maybe he can increase his NIL budget because of these recent, like just like how he can have these conversations with the players and their families, he can probably have it with the boosters and them too. It's like, hey, like I ain't going anywhere. I'm one of you guys. Give me some more money, and we'll keep building this thing, and we're going to just win championship after championship. But Coleman Hawkins, Illinois transfer, very good player last season in the Big Ten. Not, earth-shattering numbers, like 12.6 rebounds, but he's like 6'10", 6'11", can shoot it, protects the rim. This day and age, big-time transfer product. Kind of always thought he was going to be in the NBA. He was the one that came out and very open. Like, you should go check him out on Twitter. He's very outspoken. He's going to speak his mind. He talked about how he entered the transfer portal just as a formality, but just in case something happened, but he was going to stay in the NBA draft. Well, he didn't stay in the NBA draft. Deadline comes around, he withdraws, and he is in the portal looking for options. Arkansas first is rumored to, be throwing a bag of money at him. We hear $2 million. Coleman Hawkins was on Twitter laughing about how great Osabor had the biggest NIL deal to date. And it's essentially saying, no, that's going to be me. The Arkansas stuff kind of falls through. Then the winds kind of shift to Louisville. He's going to go visit Louisville. Cancels the visit kind of last minute, last week. Instead, goes to Manhattan, Kansas, and visits Kansas State. Also sounds like that this coming weekend, he's going to be at LSU. Also, SMU is rumored to be getting a visit, and it's kind of in this new final three, if you want to say that, with Kansas State, LSU, SMU. Why I find this interesting, and I think the talking point for the sake of this show, is sometimes when you are available can be as important as how good you are. And I think that Coleman Hawkins might be kind of seeing the ugly side of that, where we're obviously pretty late in the process here. It's mid-June at this point. A lot of teams, especially a lot of the best teams, have already spent their money, or they've already built their rosters and therefore spent a lot of their money. Like that they don't have, $1.5, $2 million in NIL to throw to one person. Maybe they don't want to upset the apple cart, so to speak, of like, well, we really like our 10, 11 guys. We also, in a vacuum, like Coleman Hawkins, but do we really want to introduce this, admittedly kind of volatile but talented player to what we've already built and have to throw him a bag of money. I think we're starting to see some of these, some of these schools that in theory would want him maybe say, I don't know if now is the time because it's the middle of June. And what I think happened here, obviously just my opinion, no insight into what actually went down, but I think you're seeing a situation where outside looking in, it seems like his representation probably failed him on this account. Now, maybe he truly was never really considering coming back to college, so it just didn't seem like a bridge they had to cross. And then, one thing led to another, whatever may have happened. Then he found himself back in college, and it was kind of the first time they ever thought about it. But to me, that's what it feels like, was that the moment that he withdrew from the NBA draft, that was the first time that Coleman Hawkins or anybody associated with him even considered, what are we going to do if we go back to the NCAA? And I think, again, as a Kentucky fan, as somebody who covers Kentucky, the perfect example of this is Jackson Robinson. For a long time, there were some thoughts that Jackson Robinson was leaning towards being in the NBA draft. I think that he very clearly wanted to be in the NBA draft. That's where he would prefer to be right now, most likely, would be preparing to be drafted into the NBA. But the feedback just wasn't there, or at least for where he wanted it to be. So he decided essentially to make a business decision and come back to college. However, what he was doing the whole time behind the scenes was setting up what he was going to do if he were to return. He was having conversations, most likely, with Coach Mark Pope, who he played for at BYU. He was laying the foundation and kind of going through the process with places like, just going back to BYU, with going to Kansas, some of these other big name options, also with NIL money, that were interested in Jackson Robinson. And he was kind of allowing himself to be recruited in the transfer portal while also pursuing all of his NBA draft opportunities, so that when it came time to withdraw from the NBA draft, literally he made a simultaneous decision and a simultaneous announcement. He withdrew from the NBA draft and committed to Kentucky. He kind of had a spot waiting for him there. He had money waiting for him there. In my opinion, it seems like that Coleman Hawkins never did anything on that front. It was, I'm in the NBA draft, I'm in the NBA draft, I'm in the NBA draft. Oh, wait, I'm not. Now, what are we going to do about college? And again, I think that you're finding out that it just kind of was too late for some of the big time places and some of the big time money potentially as well. And now he might be taking lesser money at a lesser program than what he probably would have dreamed of when he made this decision on the front end. And I think that's just part of living and learning in this new NIL world. And I think why, some of the representation can be so important. I have no idea who his representation is. They might do a great job. And maybe everything I'm saying ultimately is wrong, to be quite frank. But it sure seems like, from the outside looking in, because of the way some of these other decisions went down, I have a feeling I'm hitting the nail on the head on this one, that there just wasn't really any front end legwork done from Coleman Hawkins' camp as to where or how he was going to pursue the college ranks if he left the draft. Speaking of the NBA draft, talked about it a little bit on Twitter today, again, at BRamseyKSR. 2 Kentucky players projected to be probably not just lottery picks, but top 10 picks. Reed Sheppard probably pretty safely in the top 5. We're going to talk about Rob Dillingham, Reed Sheppard, and how they stack up, in my opinion, as NBA draft prospects. Now, I want to pull up a couple of tweets here. First from Draft Express. Let's get this here. Jonathan Giovanni, he recently he put out kind of some superlatives for the NBA draft, and Kentucky players, probably to the chagrin of some of us within Big Blue Nation, won 2 of those awards. Best ball handler went to Rob Dillingham. Best shooter went to Reed Sheppard. And, obviously we all know what we're thinking as Kentucky fans. These guys came off the freaking bench. Now, putting that aside, how do these guys translate as NBA draft prospects? I want to find, if I can quickly here, what Jonathan said about Rob Dillingham. I have the Reed Sheppard one queued up, so we'll just run with that for here's Rob Dillingham. Rob Dillingham is the best ball handler in this class, showing outstanding burst and twitch. He combines with a wide array of elusive moves, herky-jerky crossovers, double crossovers, in and out dribbles, behind the back dribbles, and more. I'm pretty confident that he's still projected, I think, as a consensus top 10 pick across a lot of the NBA draft experts. Now, some of the things we're going to talk about with Reed Sheppard are true about Rob Dillingham as well, but the list of guys as small as him, like he's 6'1", he's skinny, he's actually not incredibly long either. Now, he's explosively quick, he's dynamic with the ball, he's athletic, he's proved himself as a very high percentage shot maker across the board. This guy was high percentage at the rim, especially for being as small as he was. He was high percentage off of the dribble. He was super high percentage from 3-point range. And I think that he has the shot creation skills that translate to the NBA level. Now, some of it, I struggle with this throughout the college season as well at Kentucky, because there's a lot of folks, myself included at times, that want to label him as erratic or, high volume or, prone to bad shots or turnovers or different things. Kind of just because of the way he plays, and also because of some of the things that we thought about him coming from Overtime Elite and coming into college. And a lot of those things just honestly turned out to be true. Like, how erratic can you be when you're as incredibly as efficient as he was? Like, you have to remember, this is a guy that shot 45% from three. This is a guy that shot, I'm pulling it up now. Rob Dillingham was 49.5% from two. He was 44.4% from three. And he's 79.6% from the free throw line. His turnover rate was lower than Reed Sheppard. Why can I not find? Somewhat significantly lower than Reed Sheppard's, while having a somewhat significantly higher assist rate. So, like, all these things, like, well, you can only be so erratic if you are incredibly efficient from the field and you have an incredibly high assist rate with a pretty darn low turnover rate. So, to me, there's nothing erratic about his game. He just gets stuff done, and he gets it done efficiently. And I think that his shot making and shot creation will translate to the NBA. Now, some of my concerns I voiced earlier today on Twitter, again, at BRamseyKSR, about Reed Sheppard. I have 3 tweets that I want to read you before I get into what I had to say about the North Laurel product. This is, again, from Jonathan Giovanni at Draft Express on Twitter. Reed Sheppard is the best shooter in the 2024 NBA draft, converting over 50% of his threes this season, something no collegiate first-rounder has done since Glenn Rice at Michigan in 1989 on a similar volume. Now, going to a couple of the tweets from this morning, there was one from a guy on Twitter at MCFXZ. I'm not familiar with this person, but his name's Muhammad, apparently. He said, watching Reed Sheppard made me realize how much we undervalue his potential and how truly special he is. His shooting splits this season at Kentucky: 52.1% from three-point range, 51.4% on catch and shoot threes, 45.5% guarded, 57.4% unguarded, 51.4% on off the dribble three-point shots, 70% true shooting percentage. Also talked about averaging 3.2 blocks and steals per game. Reed is an otherworldly prospect that has elite shooting upside with some intriguing playmaking potential, arguably the best floor in the class. Sam Vecini, then from The Athletic, quote tweeted this and said, I do feel like Reed Sheppard is the ultimate, quote, when you actually watch the full games, you end up coming away and saying, I get it, guy in this class. The profile and idea of a 6'2 guard isn't ideal, but the tape is just incredibly good for a freshman. I agree with a lot of that. However, here's what I had to say at BRamseyKSR on Twitter in response to Sam and Muhammad and their takes. I'll just read it verbatim and then I'll stop reading things and we'll start talking again. I think evaluating Reed Sheppard as an NBA draft prospect is really interesting. He's an elite shooter, great athlete, good passer, but can he create his own shot at all in the NBA? He primarily took or made open shots at UK. Also, despite the counting stats, he was a bad defender. Size could be an issue too. There's a lot to like, and I would feel really good about his floor as a high percentage catch and shoot threat with translatable NBA athleticism that could maybe provide some secondary playmaking. But even in a weak class, I worry about his upside when drafting in the top 5. Just not sure I see it the way some do. How long is the list of 6'2 guards that aren't dynamic shot creators and or lockdown defenders? And to me, that's the point with Reed Sheppard. How many 6'2 guys without plus length, regardless of how athletic he is, how many 6'2 guards are there in the NBA that aren't just truly elite dynamic shot creators? That's what we're talking about. That's why I like Rob Dillingham so much more as a prospect. I think he's a shot creator. I think Reed Sheppard is a shot maker. Now that, again, as Sam talked about, I think that establishes his floor at a high level in the NBA. But even in a very, very weak NBA draft class, am I drafting for floor in the top 5? I don't know. I'm not an NBA GM. I don't have to make that decision, luckily. But, I do think it's an interesting discussion of, do I take the guy who, maybe can come off the bench, get me 8 points a game, get me some assists, maybe a couple steals, make threes at a really, really high percentage, or do I draft the guy who might be a bust? Because I don't think Reed Sheppard's going to be a bust. I think he's going to be a good NBA player for a long time. I just don't know if there's really a scenario where he is a really good NBA player. And I do worry a little bit about how it will translate at all. But, is that what I want with the 3rd pick, the 4th pick, the 5th pick? Again, I don't know. I don't have to make that decision. But those are the things that I would be worrying about for Reed Sheppard. Travis asks, Reed can't be Tony Parker. I've had people compare him today now to Fred VanVleet, Derek Fisher. There was one other one, and now Tony Parker. And what I would say to that is, sure, he can be. I think that, those are the mold of the 6 foot, 6'1", 6'2 guards. Maybe not elite at, dynamic shot creation, but get a lot of stuff done. Really high level passers that can make threes. I think that's a pretty good list that we just ran off there. But, we just named 3 or 4 guys that turned out to be excellent, NBA champion type players. But I could probably then list off 150 similar people that it just didn't really work out. And to me, that's my worry. By no means am I saying that I think that he's going to be a bust or that it won't work out. I just think that the hit rate on guys with Reed Sheppard's makeup is probably pretty darn thin. And that's what I worry about if I'm drafting 3rd, 4th, 5th. Whereas to me, a guy like Rob Dillingham, I think that the hit rate on guys with that profile, even with as small as he is just a little bit higher. So I think those are interesting. Travis says Bob Cousy. Trav, my thoughts on Bob Cousy and the like. If he's only as good as Bob Cousy, he'll never even get into an NBA practice, probably. But Randy Rowland says, let's see, Hurley innate ability to know the game more than it's most of you talking heads are still so ignorant to it. Thank you. I'm not really sure what that's supposed to mean. But anyway, those are my thoughts on Rob Dillingham and Reed Sheppard. Quickly, the other news recently, which I also just kind of found interesting, is kind of similar to some of the Coleman Hawkins stuff, the Dan Hurley stuff. Will Riley, the 5-star prospect in the class of 2025, still considered a potential reclass candidate as well. Found it very interesting. He had announced a top 5 and then just recently took a visit to Illinois and then removed Arkansas from his top 5 and put Illinois into it. I'm going to try to, is it Arizona, Kentucky, the New Zealand Breakers, Illinois, and then one more. But there was a time early on where Arizona had all the momentum. They seemed to be the favorite. Then when Coach Pope was hired at Kentucky, there was a lot of Kentucky smoke, I think especially in 2025, but they were willing to take him in 2024. And I think Kentucky was in the lead there. Then Orlando Antigua, I think, going to Illinois helped, and he gets he Illinois ends up gaining a lot of steam in the recruitment after this visit. Now, I think there's a little bit of like, that old game of the most recent visit gets all the smoke. He goes to Arizona, Arizona's in the league. Goes to Kentucky, Kentucky's in the league. Now he goes to Illinois, Illinois is in the lead. But to me, the story here was like, why did he remove Arkansas? That was just weird. It's like you don't need to have a top 5. You could just make it 6. I don't care if you never take a John Calipari phone call again. I don't care if you say I would rather just go to school than go play basketball at Arkansas. I just found it odd that you're going to literally remove them just to enter Illinois. That couldn't have made the Arkansas coaching staff very happy that he felt the need to just remove them. I just wanted to touch on that quickly just because I thought it was kind of funny, honestly, that like what's so intrinsically important about having a top 5 that he felt like he had to remove one in order to put Illinois in there. But that's pretty much all we have for today's show. I appreciate everybody tuning in, and we covered a lot of ground here, and you can go back and listen if you joined late. I know Holler Talk. I appreciate you jumping in here today. We talked about Dan Hurley. We talked about Coleman Hawkins, then those NBA draft evaluations of Reed Sheppard and Rob Dillingham, little Will Riley stuff here at the end. So if you want to go back and listen to the whole episode, you certainly can do that on the YouTube show. Again, this is All Fired Up with Brandon Ramsey every Wednesday at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Subscribe to the Brandon Ramsey College Basketball Show here on YouTube. You can leave a comment if you're watching this down the road as well, and I will get a response out to you at some point. Also, find the Brandon Ramsey College Basketball Show on Spotify or wherever you do listen to podcast episodes, where we have new episodes every Monday and Friday. Then also, as always, give me a follow on Twitter at BRamseyKSR. Appreciate all the interaction today in the chat. Always makes it a lot more fun. Thank you all who were watching live, and thank you to those watching down the road in the future. I hope you have a great rest of the week, and we will talk again next Wednesday.